Good evening and welcome to History on the Rocks and the Taproom here at the Blackhorse. My name is Shanna Thornton and I am the managing editor of this wonderful publication that we have here called Second in Commerce Magazine. It is one of my proudest achievements to be the managing editor of this magazine, and I know it's one of Frank Lott's proudest achievements to have created this magazine as the history, arts, and culture magazine of Clarksville and Montgomery County. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started here, and my first interview will be with Dr. Ann Silverberg. She's already up here on the stage with me, and she'll be talking with me first about Clarksville Community Concert Association, which is in the magazine, a feature article about them. And everyone, please give a big round of applause to our host, the Blackhorse, here at the Taproom. The employees of the Taproom, thank you so much. And treat them well for us. We're really feel like it's a treat to be here. We've never had a History on the Rocks at the Blackhorse before, so this is great to be able to be here with you all tonight. And I'll be interviewing Dr. Silverberg, Amelia Wallace, and Beverly Parker. So I think we have a really exciting lineup for tonight. So thanks so much. And without further ado, we will begin our interview session for History on the Rocks with Dr. Ann Silverberg. Dr. Silverberg is a professor at Austin Peay State University in the music department. And so she's also been a long-time member and also the chairman of the board.
Well, president of the board of directors.
Right, of Clarksville Community Concert Association. So how did you first get involved in Clarksville Community Concert Association?
So I moved to Tennessee to take my job in 1994. And so I promptly signed up to be a member of the Clarksville Community Concert Association, which then was presenting concerts in the concert hall at Austin Peay State University. And so in 2012, I believe it was, the hall was, and you can read about that in the magazine, and I have to thank Frank Lott and Shanna for being so kind to put a really wonderful article and with a lot of space and great pictures in the magazine's current edition. So I came in 1994, joined this association that was putting on these concerts on the corner of 8th and Marion Streets in a place that was called the Concert Hall at that time, and then it was renamed. We had a special concert event in November of 12, I think it was, when we dedicated the hall to Drs. George and Sharon Mabry, who between them had 80 plus years of service to the university as members of the music department faculty. So that was a big event for us. So that's how I got started, and I've been a member ever since. And at some point, 2003, I joined the board. And then for a while I've done a couple terms as vice president and 2 terms, I think it is, as president. And so now I'm a board member, but I'm doing things like writing articles and trying to raise money for the association going forward.
Yes, she is an expert on the history of the Clarksville Community Concert Association. It's in the section of our magazine called Voices of Impact. We have that section every single magazine, and we try to feature individuals or organizations that we feel are really making a huge impact and difference in Clarksville. If you read the article, you'll see how special Clarksville Community Concert Association is and has been to Clarksville. 75 years, you guys. 75 years they've been hosting community concerts here. Yes, thank you. That's right. They deserve it. That's no small feat, considering that they started in 1951. 1951, so this is pre-integration, right? They actually broke the color divide.
We did. We had a concert in February of 1995. We invited a wonderful soprano, and I was really surprised to find this out. And the way I worked on the history was during the pandemic. All of a sudden, there were no concerts to go to, so I had time on my hands. Began to look through the All-State, the university's student newspaper, which is searchable online, and any one of us can look at those newspapers. They're all digitized and searchable. So I found out about our founding in 1951, and I found out that in 1955, we brought in African-American soprano Teresa Green to sing a concert. And it made quite a splash. Let's just say there was an article following the concert in the All-State that talked about, how few members had actually availed themselves of the opportunity to hear a truly great young soprano. And in that year, we had not yet had Wilbur Daniel, our first African-American student on campus. So we were really, really pathbreakers in that sense, that before the university itself had integrated the student body, we were presenting a wonderful concert artist who went on to, play with or perform in concerts for Lyndon Johnson's inaugural with people like Isaac Stern, Van Cliburn, Leonard Rose. I mean, fabulous names, and had a great career all over the world singing opera. So we're really proud to point to that and any number of other artists who have gone on to have fabulous careers. And it really is a unique and wonderful series.
Right, and I think that's such a good point that the arts often are ahead of the curve as far as what's happening in the world. And they're pointing to, a lot of times, where we need to be going and where we need to be, and what we need to be doing. So I think that it's beautiful that Clarksville Community Concert Association offered that to Clarksville and kind of pushed in that way. Another really cool thing that Clarksville Community Concert Association picked up that you didn't originally, if I understand it correctly, manage is a little known festival, right? Just a little known festival that started about 10 years after the Community Concert Association.
Yeah, the Mid-South Jazz Festival was added to our list of concerts in 1961. And around 2001. It had been founded by Aaron Schmidt, a professor at the university, in 1961. So we were 10 years old when the Mid-South was founded, and then it joined our series in the early aughts. So we've been producing that final concert of our season has been now a jazz concert for about 4 years.
Right, and you've just brought some really phenomenal jazz artists to Clarksville, world-renowned, famous jazz artists that are really incredible. And we were trying to determine, did they come? And we were talking, and it was really amazing. The cool thing I want you to talk about, too, is not just that there is a concert that they host, that the community can come to Mabry Concert Hall. You buy your ticket, you're supporting Clarksville Community Concert Association. But these artists who come do workshops, and they teach the students. And then the students are giving performances based on what they learn to their family and friends for free.
That's right. I mean, really great stuff. So we brought in a saxophone quartet in the fall, and our young people were high schoolers and Austin Peay State University students. Went to their clinic, and then our university undergraduate sax quartet got some tips and went on. They were one of 27 groups that were chosen to play at the North American Saxophone Alliance conference. And so they were really, proud to have the chance to work with the professionals and use that to forward their careers. And that's exactly what it's all about, is forwarding both the artists that come in, some of whom were young and some of whom are fabulously established. If you look at your little handout, you know what I mean. So we're bringing in, young talent, and we're fostering that young talent and musical talent in our community, both Austin Peay State University students as well as high school students and junior high school students. So it's an important part of our work, that it isn't just show up, play a concert, sing, leave. We want you to do more for us. We want you to have a positive impact on the life of music, live music in our community.
Yeah, could you speak about some of the students that you talked with and what they said to you about how much that meant to them to have those interactions and those tips from professionals?
Oh yes. Well, one of our graduate students said, one of the singing for Lisetta Oropeza, who came to us, she just sung at the Vienna State Opera and was singing at the Chicago Lyric, was one of the defining experiences of her graduate education at Austin Peay. So we've had young people say, it was amazing, right? And students who might not otherwise have anything like the opportunity to hear these artists. Austin Peay State University students, free of charge. So that's part of the partnership with the university, which loans us this fabulous concert hall, which is acoustically outstanding, really, in the country, to put on these concerts. So, fostering that talent, hearing from students things like, I learned a lot. Lisetta Oropeza began to follow our students on social media, if you can believe it. She's a wonderful person as well as a fabulous singer. People who are a guitarist who hears a coloratura soprano for the first time in their life. People who are just amazed to work with professional jazz musicians who show up and explain how they can move from the piano to the drum set or whatever it is. Amazing things that they learn and experience with these fabulous musicians.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what's coming up for the Clarksville Community Concert
You're not kidding.
Association.
Well, our current president is Daniel Christian, who is a wonderful musician himself. And I think I can do this. You have the little handouts, the little half sheets. So we have our 75th anniversary season coming up in the fall of 26. And so that season, there's our logo, but you can see it will be the best bluegrass concert you've heard in your life because it's Bella Fleck.
Yay!
Bella Fleck is launching a new album called My Bluegrass Heart. So we are one of the early stops on his tour. And so it is a fabulous concert that will happen. They will open our season on October 8th. I hope you will all come. There will be a pre-concert talk, and so that's 7:30 in the evening on a Thursday. At 6:30, we're having a pre-concert talk, and Dr. Emily Crane, one of my colleagues, is going to be talking to us about the difference between classical violin playing and bluegrass fiddle, which she's been studying herself. And we also, I think we'll have a demo from one of our current students, who is one of those crossover violinists too. So it's going to be fabulous. So we're doing that. That's our opening. Then we move into something that's quite amazing. We're having the Young Concert Artist Quartet on tour a month later, and this will be a Sunday afternoon, and that's when we're going to have our biggest celebration. I mean, Bella Fleck is going to be overwhelming all by himself. So on November 8th, on a Sunday afternoon, we're going to have our main 75th anniversary celebration, and we're bringing in this quartet that's going to play Astor Piazzolla and Paul Schoenfeld cafe music. It's the coolest quartet, so it's just so totally different. Get this, 2 violins, cello, and accordion. It will be unlike anything else. And the Young Concert Artists Association, it operates out of New York. Like us, they're a federally recognized 501c3. So they put on these fabulous, they help these young people's careers to blossom. I mean, their roster includes people like Jeremy Dank, pianist that you might have heard of, Andras Schiff, Randall Gooseby, whom we've had on our series, young violinist, now is played with the Orchestre Nationale de France, at the proms. I mean, fabulous things happen with that group. So these young people are heavily vetted. They'll be absolutely fabulous. And we'll be having a big post-concert party. So that's going to be a great thing. So those are our 2 fall concerts. Then we move along, and we have something that a lot of musicians know about. And you see it, the Canadian Brass Quintet. So the Canadian Brass is world famous for their shows. And they're going to work, and of course, all of these groups, Bella Fleck, one of his side musicians, or maybe somebody who's worked with Bella Fleck, because Bella Fleck's a very busy man. So we will have some kind of a bluegrass workshop. We will have some work with the Young Concert Artists Quartet. We'll have some kind of a clinic, probably high school and Austin Peay students, with a Canadian Brass Quintet on Sunday, February 7. Then we move along into concert number 4, involves a wonderful classical guitarist whom we've had as a soloist on the series. But this time he's accompanying a fabulous mezzo-soprano who's actually an alum of Young Concert Artist, who's had a wonderful career and has been singing opera in San Francisco and all over the place. So mezzo-soprano Sasha Cook will come, and that will be a really interesting and fine concert. And we finish with something with our jazz concert. Sasha Cook and Jason Bio, you see, Tuesday, March 30th. And then we finish with Aaron Deal. And so that's the last concert in the Mid-South Jazz Festival, Sunday, April 11th, 2027. So that's our full set of 5 concerts. And you get them all, and you become a member of our association for $100. I can promise you will not hear, and even if you buy a single ticket, you will not get to hear Bella Fleck for the kinds of prices we're charging. And any 2 of these concerts are well worth the price. And of course, you're supporting the arts. You're helping us bring these concerts and the workshops to Clarksville. I hope you'll help us.
And tickets go on sale?
Tickets go on sale on July 1st.
July 1st.
So
very soon. Very soon.
Not even a month away.
Yeah, and so you can make the plan now?
Make the plan, yeah.
Yeah, make the plan now.
Save those dates. Those dates.
Yes. So anything you want to add about, what maybe any special moments for you during, I know you've had many, but if you could pick maybe one
Special moments.
that you could share with us from the concert series.
From the concert series. I mean, knowing that, seeing the energy from the young people is fabulous, but hearing this music that sometimes you just can't quite believe that you're hearing that. I can tell you that, for instance, Chanticleer, we've had them 3 times. It's one of the most renowned all-male choral ensembles in the world. So I was president at the time, I had to introduce them. And then the very first thing they sang, and of course, I'm a musicologist, so let me just say, there's a lot of stuff that I listen to that nobody else wants to listen to. And I'll tell you, Chanticleer, they did a fabulous program with new and popular things. I think they sang a Billy Joel arrangement. They did great stuff. But as I'm coming into the hall, I'm hearing them, and I had to kind of wait, because I didn't want to interrupt before the applause began. They were singing Machot. They were singing medieval French music. And it was better than any recording I have heard. I mean, and let me just say, I've listened to this a lot because of my work, but it was like, you just can't even believe that's 12 live voices on stage sounding like that in Clarksville, Tennessee. And that's some of the beauty of it. You're just like, and I've always been thrilled to hear Lisette Oropeza, Denise Graves, Kurt Elling. I mean, just incredible stuff. You can't believe it's live. You can't believe it's just so fabulous. And so that experience to me is really worth it all. Because it takes a board, it takes kind of a village to pull it all off. And so there's a team of about, Brenda Lynn Brenda Lynn is here, who's been a wonderful member of our board for a number of years and hugely important to us in helping us promote concerts. But Joel Carter, Daniel Christian, Rashida Leverett is on our board. We have
Daniel's
lots of...
here.
Daniel Christian is our president. Here he is. He's on this poster. So we have a board of about 15, 16 people. Yes, it included... We had our first meetings in the past 2 months, I think, without Dr. Solly Fye, dear friend of mine. So we miss him terribly. But again, and he was a stalwart member who was... He was a member of our association before he became Dr. Fly. So he came to Austin P the year before I was born. So I mean, let me just say, he knew a lot about the association, and he was so working with people like that to make sure that these concerts continue. And so looking ahead, we're doing strategic planning this week, actually, looking ahead to year 80, year 90, and year 100. Yes, we will be here. I will be a very old lady living somewhere else, with my walker and my dentures. But you know what? I will be an online subscriber at that point, because we do that too, whenever possible. Like, I'm not sure, there are negotiations where some artists are not they're not that fond of live stream. But that's one of our goals, is to not just have it with a tremendous local impact, but also to expand that impact out to the whole world. And so it's so exciting for us. And like I say, you will not find finer concerts. So I hope you will join us.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Silverberg.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Woo. Do any of you have any questions for Dr. Silverberg? We'll take a moment and take some questions if any of you have any, or about the Concert Association.
How can you offer those tickets so affordably when you pay these artists to be here?
Yes.
Good question.
Thank you so much for that question. So, and I do mention this in the article, as in 1951, so in 2026 and 2027, the concerts need underwriting. So, obviously we offer free tickets to students. We offer $5 tickets to any student who happens to not be a student at Austin Peay. So we have to make up a lot of ground. And I can tell you that if we sell out Bella Fleck, and we should, we will still be way behind the 8 ball. How do we do it? Donations, grants, corporate sponsorships. We're working on that, and we've had some fabulous support from one of our really early presidents. You may have heard of this man, Fred Detweiler. Okay, he was one of our presidents way back when in the early 60s. Let's sing. So they've been very generous to us in just recent years. And our first president was a guy named Charles Gary. He went on to a big career in music ed. So we've had people over the years have really helped us tremendously. But we're just getting to the point, and of course this season that I just explained, it's our most expensive season I think ever. So we're really we need to make. I mean, it's not that we will go broke, But I want to see us be in even better shape financially a year from now than we are now. And we're in a good place, and we're just beginning getting to the place where we're able to see into the future rather than, okay, as somebody said to me once, they asked that same question. I said, well, it's kind of a walk of faith because we need to make sure that we're balancing our books every year. This year, I can promise you, our books will be balanced, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to see a lot of a revenue of various types, grants and corporate donations and individual donations, to make sure that we can continue this, right? Continue the concert series and offer more and more wonderful artists to our community. Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
Mention to this group about the tribute with Sally coming up.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because it does need as much airtime as we can get. And I think the family would be happy for me to say this. Dr. Solly Fott, who was a wonderful member of the museum and huge supporter of many different organizations and the arts and DAC and everything else in the city, his memorial service, he passed away on April 6th. And the celebration of life for Dr. Solly Fott, save the date, please come to Mabry Hall on the corner of 8th and Marion on July 25th, the last Saturday in July at 4 o'clock. That will be when Dr. Fott's celebration of life service will be held. So, and I understand it's going to involve some speaking, but it will certainly also involve some music. So,
That'll be in the Mabry Concert Hall.
in the Mabry Concert Hall, that's right. July 25th at 4. And here we are in Clarksville, Tennessee with this really wonderful facility, and it's only getting better. There's not everything that I can say, but I can say this much. I do know that we've just managed to get even more cameras to improve the live stream situation. So it's really, it's a great place to be for music listening especially.
Yeah, thank you. We will do a transition up here, and our next guest will be Miss Amelia Wallace.
Okay.
All right, we're back, and we brought an extra guest with us. Brad Martin has been voluntold to join us up here. And so for just a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about an article that precedes the one about James K. Polk in the magazine. There's a biography about Martilla Fraser Johnson in here. It's written by Phyllis Smith, who's the historian for Mount Olive Cemetery Historical Preservation Society. She could not be here tonight. There is a connection to the President Polk article. That's why I'm bringing it up to you. Martilla Fraser Johnson was enslaved by Cave Johnson, who was the first Postmaster General of the United States, and he was appointed by President James K. Polk. Cave Johnson was from Clarksville, Tennessee, and so Martilla cared for his children and traveled with him to Washington, D.C. and lived there while he was Postmaster General. And so I encourage you to read this article before, because it'll give you even more insight right onto that. And then it's followed by the article called A Family of Stories about President James K. Polk. And so these two wonderful people sitting up here with me, Miss Amelia Wallace and Mr. Brad Martin, are relatives of President James K. Polk. And so they came to talk to us about an exhibit that's happening in the museum. It opens in July. And the exhibit is about Cave Johnson and James K. Polk. And it includes documents. And so Amelia is quite the genealogist, and when she arrived, you guys, I'm not joking, her materials are bigger than Amelia is, really. She's got more paperwork than anybody I've ever seen carrying it around, and she's got the family lines divided up into these notebooks. And she brought all the notebooks.
They're all my proofs.
Yeah, they're her proofs. Yes, that's right. So we sat down together to talk about what Amelia might have that our curator of exhibits, Terry Jordan, would be interested in exhibiting in this exhibit that's going to open in July. And we thought, well, wow, while we're sitting here talking, Frank had the genius idea, really, to maybe we should write something about this. Maybe there's something here that we should track down. And so So it began. There was stuff all over the conference table, and we were all talking at once, and Frank's reading from the internet at the same. It was so much fun, actually. If you've ever sat around with your family or your friends and you've tried to figure out your family lineage, it was like being invited in to someone else's family and sitting around with them and trying to figure this out. And I just love it. I think it's the most fun. Do you love it? Is that why you do it so much? Is that connection?
I was raised by my grandmother, his grandmother too, but she was my mama. She was, her mother was, our great-grandmother was the Polk lady. And so I'm so sorry I didn't ask her all these questions that I now wonder about. But growing up with her, and I had no brothers and sisters, so I was the center of attention, so to speak. But growing up with her, I had to know all this history. She talked about Hampton Station all the time, where the Polks lived, and so it was just a way of life.
Yeah. I think family stories very much are a way of life, and I think that oral tradition is just so beautiful, really. And that's what you all were given, both of you were given that oral tradition and passed down to you until we were trying to trace it back. Like, is it true? And who is it true about? That's the other thing that you have, if it's come down through the generations, through quite a few, as you all have probably experienced with your own families, it gets a little jumbled at times. And so that was, Brad was asking, so Amelia, do you think it's true? And so you get those lines in the story, because I sat with it for a while, like how should we present it to people? And I realized that what I wanted to do with the story is to present the search, what it was like for you both to sit down together, and then to sit down with us, with me and Frank, and look for these names and the dates and put it together. All of us just sit there and say, is it possible, given what you knew and what you knew and what you heard and all of that. So tell them how you're related to President Polk and the story you heard growing up.
He heard that story.
Okay, Brad heard that story. Yes.
The folklore story?
The folklore story.
So Amelia and I are first cousins. We are, correct me if I'm wrong, because she likes the dish on me. First cousins, 4 generations removed from James K. Polk. And that scene, it's all a big deal. Well, Polk died way before the Civil War, so you think about the time period, that's pretty close for 4 generations. That's it. The Martin family tended to go long periods of time before they had kids. And so the generations stretch. There's a term for it. I can't think of it right now. You want me to tell the folklore story that I asked you?
She brought it up.
Yeah. It's in there. It's in the magazine.
In the magazine, it talks about folklore is extremely hard to track down. It just is. So the story that I had heard, and my mother was a borderline genealogist, not like Amelia. Your mother was too.
Aunt Dorothy had a lot of information.
Yeah. So my mother, Dorothy Martin, and Amelia's mother were in cahoots with genealogy, but Amelia's taken it to a different level. But the story was J.K. Polk he and his wife could not have children, and the reason was he had some sort of injury as a child and had surgery, and it was no anesthesia, no painkiller, and it was very difficult, but he couldn't have kids. So the story was our great-grandmother was one of his favorites, and that the folklore was that he wanted to adopt her, and finally her father said, time out, this is not happening. So then during the interview, I looked to Amelia and said, is this true? And then that's where the whole folklore story came about.
Right. And so then Amelia gave us newspaper articles that were from it's one of your aunts, Lisi.
Aunt Lacey.
Aunt Lacey. And however many, is she your great aunt?
She's our great-grandmother's sister, Lacey Amelia Polk Mallory.
Yes.
Her husband was Captain Thomas Polk in the Civil War. He was taken prisoner and sent to Chicago. When he got out, he went right back into the war and was quite a hero. He and Aunt Lacey lived in Adams in Robertson County.
Right. And Lacey had told the story in the newspaper article about James K. Polk doting on and wanting to adopt one of, and they said one of the Mallory children. They used her married name. But of course, she was a child when Polk was president, and so when he was alive. So they couldn't have been Mallory children. Mallory children were her children. And so they had misquoted. We had talked about how they had ascribed the names incorrectly in this article, when it was originally printed. And so it had to be her father's children. He had quite a few children with their great-grandmother, Ma, who you all called Ma. And their pictures are in the magazine article right there, that Ma and Lacey were the youngest daughters of James Irvin Polk. And so they could not have been the daughters or Ma could not have been, because she is the very youngest. She was not born when James K. Polk was alive. That's what we realized when we were all there. But they had older sisters. So we think that the story just got ascribed to them. But it was really, I'm sure he visited regularly his cousin's household, and he had all of these daughters.
Well, there were 13. Aunt Lacey and Ma had, there were 13 of them.
11 other siblings, right?
Yeah.
So you see, they had quite a big family. So that's where we managed to put together all of that to present to you the story. And so I hope that you'll read it, and I hope it encourages you to dig into any mysteries that are in your own family, because I think that is, it's just so important. Wouldn't you agree? Just the journey itself and trying to figure that out, you learned, I'm sure, so much more about your family just in the search. Yeah.
Well, a lot of this interest came about when Bradley and I visited as Colonel Ezekiel Polk's home,
Right.
which is in Robertson County.
Yes.
And he was the president's great-grandfather, and he was our great-grandfather, fifth great-grandfather, whatever. And that home still stands. Well, it's encapsulated. Now, you being an architect, you'd call it something else, but anyway, this is a log cabin encapsulated in a more modern home. And it's this family, the Goodman family in Robertson County, and the cabin is like their den, and there's the original fireplace is there. And of course, it's on the, register of historic.
We found out a lot about James K. Polk because one of the things we wanted to know is, did he visit Clarksville regularly during he served 2 terms as the governor of Tennessee. And during his gubernatorial campaigns, was he here? And what about during his presidential campaign? Was he here? That's one of the other things that we wanted to know, And given that the family is in Robertson County, we thought, well, probably so. And so I just did a simple newspaper search, really, on newspapers.com through the Leaf Chronicle, and it pulled up everything about Polk and his travels to all these little towns around us, to Clarksville. He actually celebrated his presidential win here in Clarksville, and he came to be with his supporters, and they congratulated him. And so he was a Democrat, and at the time, he was not expected to win at all. And the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle was adamantly against him, you guys. They were not nice about President Polk and their coverage. And so they kept, because they were a Whig-affiliated newspaper, if you know anything about politics of that time period. And so Henry Clay was running against President Polk for president. And so they were betting all on Henry Clay, that the Polk would never, ever pull it off. And of course, once he won, they kind of had to eat their words, and they had to post the announcements of his big celebrations and all that. So in the process, I like to imagine, though we could not find any definitive proof anywhere, that your family members were there and were with him at times, you know, during his speeches or during his campaign rallies, as they were at the time. You know, so I just like to imagine those Clarksville connections and relatives, even though we didn't find proof of that. You know, the newspaper doesn't list who's in attendance. But I just thought that was so cool because it connected even more to those stories that Lacey told. He was here. He was around in the area, definitely. So I think that's neat as a Tennessean to know, for me too, and as a Clarksvillian, that bit of history. Anything else that you all want to add about, you know, any words of encouragement for those who are looking through their genealogy, or anything else you want to tell about this story?
Well, one thing about the story, if the home place for our grandmother and her 11 siblings was, if anybody knows where the old Powell place was, it's now developed into a multi-family apartment complex. It's across from where Grace Community Church is. It was the Powell family bought it after the Ewing family owned it for years and years, but it's near the Hampton Station area, Kirkwood area. And I will say, if anybody's into genealogy, it really helps to have a cousin like Luke. Does the hard work. If you ask any genealogist, the county archives department in this community, who the most diligent, hard-working, I will not give up till I solve the answer genealogist is in Clarksville, it's Amelia.
Please.
Yeah, I think she gets it from Lacey, you guys. If you read about Lacey, she was going. She loved to tell stories. She loved to tell the family history. She would take the train every day from Paris, Tennessee, where she ended up living later in her life, to come back to Clarksville. Every day they reported on that in the newspaper. She was known for doing it. And she'd ride into town every day and talk to meet with her buddies and talk to her family members and head back home.
Supposedly she was invited on the first train ride from Adams to Clarksville.
I believe it. I believe that bit of folklore, though. We don't have the proof on that either. But knowing how they reported on her dedicated train travel, I mean, that report showed the way that they presented it. So that she was there all the time on the train.
There's also a story that I probably shouldn't tell, but she's a hero of the Civil War. I'll tell it. When the ladies in Adams were being bothered by the Union soldiers, that means they were killing their chickens, they were killing their hogs. Aunt Lacey went to the Confederate officers in Sumner County. Now, this is a documented story.
Right.
Right. She went to them and told them that they're bothering us. You're going to have to come do something about it. And supposedly they came. The Union soldiers were encamped around where the Port Royal Bridge used to be. And they took them prisoner, and everybody was happy.
All right. Well, you can read about, it's similar, Sarepta Jordan and Dr. Gildry reports on, this report is on New Providence. This article is part 3 in his series. He's not here tonight. But he discusses in there the reports of Clarksville citizens of, their complaints about Union soldiers either burning their timber, burning their fences, or killing their chickens and things like that. So, I mean, it's a product of war that those things happen.
Right.
And so, there's some, if you would like to read more about that as far as Clarksville, not in Adams, but in New Providence, read Dr. Gildry's article, his part 3 on transformation and liberation in New Providence. and it'll give you a little bit of that kind of story as well. Questions? Does anybody have any questions for Amelia or for Brad? Yes, Larry.
I've got a comment.
Yeah.
In researching the Cumberland River, as I take it, where it seems, one reference said that both Jackson and Polk passed through here on a steamboat going down the Cumberland, then up the Ohio River to Pittsburgh, and then they went overland to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
For their inauguration.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I have a piece of trivia also.
Sure.
I'll share it in after group
Okay.
because it has to do with the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't really talk about it, but let me slip around here by you.
Sure. Do you want Amelia's mic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these two, in the middle of doing this research,
Oh, I know what he's going to do.
we discovered recently, we unveiled two historic panels, permanent panels on Clarksville and Montgomery County's connection to the Alamo. There's a Montgomery Countyan who died at the Alamo. His name is Joseph Bayless. It turns out that these two folks are also related to him, so they're double dippers on the history side. I said, you can't be double dippers. You have to just choose one, okay? But they are actually related to Joseph Bayless as well. They would be nieces and nephews
Yeah,
of
he's an
Joseph
uncle.
because Joseph's younger sister, Sally, married in Ogburn, and it came down through the Ogburn line. That's Ogburn Chapel Road. If you're out in the Woodlawn area, you know where Ogburn Chapel is.
Thomas Ogburn.
Thomas Ogburn, and so it comes down through the Ogburn line that they're connected to Joseph Bayless through his wife, Sally, who was a younger sister of Joseph.
Sally's only daughter was the wife of the first Bradley Martin. And he's the fifth.
One other piece of trivia, you may not know this, I always like to tell it. In the administration of James K. Polk, when Cave Johnson was Postmaster General, he made a little change to the way the Postal Service worked. Cave Johnson introduced the first adhesive postage stamp.
How many times?
So think about that. Every time you put a stamp on a letter in the future, think of Cave Johnson of Clarksville, Tennessee, as Postmaster General. He figured out that instead of collecting the money when the mail was delivered to the receiver, you pay for it on the front end by putting a prepaid postage on the letter. So it saved the Postal Service in the early days by doing that. But adhesive postage stamp, pretty cool.
Smart guy.
Any other questions, anybody? Well, let's give Brad and Amelia a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so our big feature story for this magazine is right here in the centerfold. Life doesn't hold still then. The photography and the story are by Beverly Parker. She is an amazing photographer, and she is quite the historian herself. I don't know if you consider yourself that, but I think as far as it comes to the history of land between the rivers and land between the lakes, wow, Beverly is such an expert. And I'm just honored that we were able to print your photographs and your wonderful story of your family. And so, and your community. And also what you've been doing since it became land between the rivers. So we'll just start. And if you could tell everyone what land, for those who might not know, what is land between the rivers or land between the lakes?
I'll first say thank you, and thank you to Frank and to DG.
DC, yes.
DC. I want to say Daniela because
Yes.
that's what I always
Right,
call her.
right.
But you all have been so helpful in all of this. Actually, if you're a purist, then you say land between the rivers
Right.
because the rivers were there before the lakes were. If you probably are a newcomer, it's land between the lakes because now it's Kentucky Lake and it's Berkeley Lake.
Right. And the two rivers that you're talking about are which two rivers?
The Cumberland River and the Tennessee River. And I still say the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River.
Yeah. Yes. So land between is between these two bodies of water. And can you tell everybody a little bit about how your family got there? And then we'll move into, how it got to be underwater.
It's funny that Richard Gildry has been writing about New Providence for the third time. Well, my great-grandparents migrated from New Providence in 1885 to Stewart County. And that's where they stayed for almost 100 years until the TVA did buy my great-grandfather's farm. Wow. And they were farmers, sawmill people, politicians, and we had a wonderful life living that agrarian lifestyle.
Right, there were whole communities there, schools, churches, stores.
Yes. Schools, stores, churches, fishermen, just a multitude of different vocations that were there, preachers, doctors, moonshiners. And I might say that the South End, where I was from, was known for a lot of moonshiners, but I never did once hear my father say anything negative about the moonshiners because they were providing for their families.
Right.
And I might add that a lot of that moonshine made its way to Clarksville.
Absolutely, it did. And so TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, was started in 1931, I think is the year. But it was started under FDR, right, under the New Deal Act. And so then Beverly gives you the background. She goes way back and gives you a little bit of background about just the area in general and then what happened in modern times.
The reason for the TVA's presence, the Tennessee River and the Cumberland Rivers flooded and took valuable soil, wonderful soil with it. And in 1937, the worst flood, I guess, in the history of Kentucky was in Paducah. And I remember my parents saying that people had to relocate from Paducah even into Dover. And they went that far trying to find a place to live because 90% of Paducah was underwater. Wow. And that was the Ohio River that was flooding. But the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River also flooded. And what TVA did was control that flooding by building the Kentucky dams and the Barkley dams, plus the TVA afforded a more affordable electricity for people that live there.
Right. I think a lot of people don't understand that all the lakes in Tennessee are man-made except for Reelfoot Lake. It is the only lake in the state of Tennessee that is a naturally formed lake. And so, right, the TVA created Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake, and it was 1933, that the TVA was started. And so, so one of their things was to manage that flow and to generate electricity, as you said. So how was your family involved once that happened?
When the Tennessee River was flooded, my family was not directly involved in that.
Right.
But many of our friends and a lot of my relatives were that had to move in 1943, and most of them, it was kind of funny, most of them would move to Murray, Kentucky, Paris, Tennessee, other places in Kentucky rather than coming this way. Then in the early 1960s, we began hearing about the President Kennedy going to flood the Cumberland River. And keep in mind that where we live was that sliver of land between the two rivers. But that really affected us because the TVA wanted all of that land. And so when those rumors became fact, my father did not put up a fight at all. He knew that the government was bigger than he was, and so that's when we started looking for other places to live, and we did find a wonderful town in Robertson County, Sadlersville, where my parents spent the last several years making new friends. But now my sister Helen and I were 17 and 18. Helen's here now. I'll have to say that we're at that age. We were fearless. We just didn't anticipate what was going to happen, and I'll admit that it wasn't until years after that it began settling in what had been lost down there. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of when I decided that I was going to do what I could to resurrect what was no longer down there.
Right, right. So if you think about it, that amount of acreage, it's about 171,000 acres, you guys. That's what the sliver of land is. That's how many acres we're talking about. So that's how many families, that's how many people in a community, how many people can fill up about 170 plus acres, 171,000. So that gives you some perspective on the size of it, right, of what that encompassed. And then your dad was instrumental in the trace,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Yes, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, came to Dover, and my father was the head of it. And he was instrumental in getting what is now the trace built. But it was called sarcastically the road to nowhere because people would laugh in Dover about this man is trying to get this stretch of road built to meet Kentucky, and who's going to be driving on it anyway? So but he wasn't instrumental in doing that.
Yeah.
And obviously, another thing about the WPA, that's where I got to know so much about Eudora Welty because she worked with the WPA.
Yes, yes.
And she, like we saw more than what's just on the surface. She saw more in her native Mississippi, and I saw more in my native Stewart County. And that's one big reason that I wanted to write this article, was to dispel the notions that it was an oppressed and depressed area, because that's not true.
Right. And so the title, Life Doesn't Hold Still Then, is a line in Eudora Welty's Optimist's Daughter. It's referenced in the back, that book. Mm-hmm. But this is the reference. That's why there's a little footnote symbol there for you to go check that out. I think some of the most compelling moments that I felt while reading this were when you talk about when you can access that gravesite of the father. It's here. There's a picture here on the front cover. Can you tell them about how that site is not accessible at all times, and it's because of the flooding now? It's because of the state of it currently, and how you have to wait to access that. Yeah.
I'll give you just a quick backstory here.
Yeah.
My friend, there were 3 friends and I that we documented 140 cemeteries in the South End, that's the Tennessee end, and then a few over in Kentucky, because there were people that lived in Kentucky that went to school in Stewart County. Leslie is one of them at Rushing Creek. We doing that was just, it was an honor, but yet one of the most wonderful adventures I've ever had in my life. But the cemetery that she's talking about is the Whaley Cemetery. And at Winter Pool, that means when the water is its lowest in the Tennessee River, this obelisk-shaped tombstone rises up out of the Tennessee River on a little shell bar. And I went there about 3 years ago, and it just changed my life to see that stone there. A little bit of humor here. I have this knack, and I use coat hangers. Other people use different devices, but I can take coat hangers, and I can go over disturbed ground to see if there is a grave there.
Yes.
And I've been called some names for doing that, but it really has helped us out.
Oh, yeah.
So I took my coat hangers, got out of the boat. Of course, we had to go by boat.
Right.
The minute I started walking on that shell bar, these coat hangers started moving. I knew that everything about it was true. It was Mr. Whaley, and it was his 3 little children that were buried there. You had the option of moving loved ones that were already interred, knowing that this flood was going to happen. His widow decided not to move the remains, so they remain there. Those remains are there today, and it's a spiritual, it's a feeling when you go there and know that these remains are still there, and it still boggles my mind why a boat, a propeller, has not broken that stone, because it's about that tall, but it has not.
Yeah. Beverly goes through the article and tells you a lot about different cemeteries and her work in the cemeteries, as well as her photography, different things that she's photographed. I think some of the most haunting ones are the abandoned playground equipment, the steps from Russian Creek School that lead into the water now, and there is no building there, right? It's just the steps, all of those. But then her beautiful wildflower photographs of native wildflowers from Tennessee. There's everything in here. Bird's foot violet, she's got hearts a bursting. If you don't go venture out into the woods to find these, she's photographed them for you. So you don't have to, hearts a bursting isn't easy to see. Some of these are not easy to see. So I think that's really special. She gave us even more photographs than we could fit in this. And so I think that was so special to see her work over the years. So I know that gets shown at DAC sometimes. And so please make sure you go out and see her work anytime it's shown at DAC, because you're getting to see this work that she is continuing to do and continuing to go back and revisit and revisit. It's such a spiritual article and such a beautiful article. I really, I hope you all will read it. And thank you for sharing your journey with all of us and letting us see what you've dedicated yourself to, and to preserving the memory of these places and these communities. I think that is truly special, because those communities aren't there anymore. So they're under the water. So that's wild to me. And you talk about that, which I think is really neat.
I hope that after people read this article, that when they do go to the land between the lakes, that they will realize that it's just not a recreational area.
Right.
Full of hunters and fishermen and off-the-road vehicles and jeeps that tear up the roads. It's much more than that. And actually, the Forest Service has put obelisks, white obelisks by cemeteries, and beige obelisks beside the sites of the schools.
Oh, that's great.
So you have to look for them, but they're there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Any questions? Yes, Larry, go ahead.
A lot of towns around here are named after European towns or after the settlers. Why is that little town in LBL named Model?
What did he say? Why is the little town in LBL?
Where did Model come from?
Model?
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad you asked. Originally, it was not Model. It was Barrett's, because there's Barrett's Creek there. But Model was supposedly a model town. And that's why it was named Model, because it was constructed as a model town. One quick thing about Model, sometimes if I'm watching TV and there's a storm, a radar, you better get to inside and all. If you live in Model or Tharp, you need to go into a place where, that you're going to be safe. Little do they know, Model and Tharp have not been there for 65 years. But that's where Model came from, Larry.
Yes.
Leslie's from Rushing Creek, and Ginger Creek.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anyone? Well, thank you to Beverly for sharing your story, for sharing your photography. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. That concludes our History on the Rocks, and we'll see you next time.